Dear beautiful souls, today I want to speak to you about something that we all know but do not respond to it. Let's speak about the elephant in the room. Nobody here will get out alive. And yet, even though we will not get out alive, we all know we will die. We do not live our lives remembering this. In fact, most of what we do is death denial. We are acting and pretending as if this temporary personality that is not even us, but that we perceive as an object of our dream, which is Maya, the illusion, we pretend it will last forever. And we act as if it will last forever. So we are concerned with what it believes it needs. We are concerned with pleasing it, obeying it, believing in its fearful stories. And one of the main ways in which it keeps us trapped in a lower state is by being in the survival state. Many people are struggling right now, economically. Big changes are happening on planet Earth, systemic changes, spiritual changes. And it is experienced as a lot of uncertainty. And to the ego, change subconsciously is always perceived as death. Because biologically speaking, it wants to achieve homeostasis. Well, what does that mean? It wants to control its environment and stabilize it. So it can avoid fear. And if it cannot avoid fear, because there is some object of fear in the experience, let's say illness, financial issues, relationship troubles, whatever there is that reminds the ego of impermanence, the fear of death that it is so in denial of, it will trigger addictive behavior, pleasure-seeking behavior, an overspilling of craving and desires in order to get this elusive thing called happiness or pleasure to avoid the fear of death. But I got news for you. You're not getting out alive. At least not the part of you that you identify with, the personality. It's not going to survive this experience. And yet we make it king. And yet we let it make short-term decisions on behalf of survival. And then through this tunnel vision, we stop seeking to express compassion to others. We stop seeing them. We get tunnel vision because surviving is the highest priority. That is what your biology says. But you'll never survive, ultimately. At least not this limited version of you that you confuse for yourself. But we base most on our decisions as human beings on this human condition. And because we are afraid to survive, we go for the things that make us feel safe. But a lot of times, the choices that make us feel safe are choices out of dishonesty, out of cowardice, are choices that are ethically very questionable, taking advantage of other people, manipulating people, trying to use others to try to gain this type of comfort. And because they're not in our minds, we believe they don't really exist. They're just objects outside of us that we can take advantage of to make this evil thing, the survival fear, go away. But this is no way of living. There's no dignity in it. There's no grace in it. There's just reactivity and panic and selfishness in it. Most people, when they die, they do not regret being kind. They do not regret spending an extra minute with a little child. They do not regret spending time and attention with their pets, for example. They will never say on the deathbed, I regret this one time where I fed this homeless dog. They will not say, I regret this one time where I gave somebody who was facing great psychological disillusionment. Yeah, when I gave this person a hug, I will regret it. When I helped the blind man over the street, you will not regret that. But what you will regret if you buy into the survival fear to such an extent that you do not pay attention to the so-called others. The great Indian saint Ramana Maharishi was asked one time by some British reporter, as far as I remember, I might remember incorrectly, who asked, in terms of compassion, what shall we do about others? And Ramana Maharishi's response was, there are no others. There is just the self. And it is important to understand that the self is not a separate thing, but that you find it in everyone and everything. And it is even the most apparent in sentient beings. When you make eye contact with humans, with children, with animals, what looks right back at you is yourself. But if you believe this biological construct and you think this should be the origin of your action, then you believe in the limited material universe. And that means that the world becomes the justification for your actions, not God. And to make ethical choices, to make compassionate choices, it means often to do the thing that is the very opposite of what the ego wants. It means to, for example, endanger a deep friendship that you have with somebody. If that somebody is lying to themselves, and out of compassion you have to speak truth to them. And you know they will get angry, then you know they will get loud, and your ego doesn't want to feel it, so it wants to avoid that feeling and says, no, this relationship as it is makes me comfortable, so let me lie to that friend. So again, survival prioritized instead of heart, instead of wisdom, instead of intuition and care. And like that, humans are sleepwalking all the time. They sleepwalk through life, being identified with the mind and the body, being ignorant of the higher realms of spiritual reality. And of course, it is not a story about fault or shame or blame. It is a story about ignorance. It is a story of not knowing. And because they do not know, because they do not find evidence of God, they do not find evidence of the divine, because they are yet capable of perceiving that or understand. It's kind of like watching a theater piece. You know? There's the obvious play on the stage that you can perceive, but there are many things happening in the background that make this play possible. But they do not have access to what is, let's say, behind the curtain, behind the stage, to the machinery, to the logic of it, to the law of it. So therefore it must not exist in their perception. They go to church, they pray, but it is hollow. Most prayers are about improving their own condition. But your condition is not separate from the condition of other people or other sentient beings. And conditions can only truly improve if the condition of everybody is improved. But people do not focus on that. People perceive life to be unfair, and they perceive to be a victim to life, and therefore they must lie and manipulate and take advantage because life is already unfair and they are victim to it. So of course they must get ahead. They must level the playing field. But these are the voices of evil. And it's much easier to fall into the voices of evil, to prioritize your own, let's say, biological body survival over the well-being of everybody else. It's very easy because this is your focus point. This is where you're immersed in. This is what seems to be your primary reality. But this is exactly the inversion. Our primary reality is Buddha nature. And because we're caught in the noise and in the tunnel vision and in the need to survive, we do not get in touch with Buddha nature because that requires deceleration, that requires stillness. This requires touching the divine by being in nature and letting go of the self-centered, narcissistic mind carousel that constantly revolves around itself and therefore traps you in reincarnation, looping you into a sort of hypnosis. But the mind will say, my spiritual practice is not financially supported, so I cannot do it. But again, you're going to die either way. Do you want to die with dignity? Do you want to die with having uncovered some of the mysteries? Do you want to die with having found meaning? Or do you want to stay in a meaningless rat race forever where everybody fights each other in a dog-eat-dog society? Yeah. I'd rather starve on a mountain with my dignity intact than lying to people and taking advantage. So then when the thing that is not this body, experience the death of this, it will be pleased with itself. It will be at peace. Because from a higher perspective, we will know that we have not betrayed the laws of God, that we have not bought into the material world as evidence, but that despite the difficulties, we chose to be kind and to share wisdom and the methods of access to God. Who knows? Maybe one day I cannot pay rent anymore. Maybe one day I end up on the streets. And in many lifetimes, I have. And so have you, and you remember that. But the thing that gave us inner strength was always that beyond death, we knew we loved God's children. So if we die either way, why spend our whole life trying to preserve this? If you fail in life, as people perceive, maybe in a material sense, but you do not fail in love, in dignity, in compassion, or in wisdom, then you have not failed. In fact, you have succeeded no matter how much the experience tried to scare you. Contemplate about that, my friends. Be well.